What's the crack? Welcome back to the Magic Minds podcast. I'm Matt Burke. We are the Liberty's #1 podcast, the best podcast on the Liberties, I'm glad to say. I've got a cracking show today. Today's episode is with Dr. Katie Baird. Katie Baird is a psychologist for the last 20 years, but now her main role is compassion-focused therapy. So it was a brilliant interview, really enjoyed it for the second time. So the first time we recorded the interview, something happened with the technology. Don't know whose fault that was, probably mine. But she was absolutely sound, so she came back on again. It was brilliant. And I have to be honest, and I said this in the interview, I felt the second interview was better. We were more connected. And the stuff we covered is what is compassion-focused therapy, what's her background, who inspired her approach to her job, what actually compassion-focused therapy looks like, and how can people use it or bring it into their life. You know, I'm a huge advocate for compassion for yourself. I believe when you are more compassionate to yourself, you just are more compassionate to the rest of the world. You know, I always believe it's an inside job, and it was brilliant. And that's the stuff that we covered with Katie. You know, people think that compassion is white and fluffy and it's nice. It's not. It's about doing the work. It's about forgiving yourself and being compassionate to yourself. And then you just see the world in a more compassionate way. So look, have a listen to the interview. Let us know what you think. Love to hear your feedback. As always, I want to thank Noel Riley from Rooney Media Graphics. We need any graphic design, any work done around posters, brochures, banners. There you man. He's our main sponsor with us from the start, and he's a fantastic advocate for our podcast. Thanks very much, Naylor. Also, we have libertyphotos.ie with Andy. Andy's me trusty sidekick on the podcast. So if you need any photographs done for weddings, bar mitzvahs, 24th, he's your man. Absolute legend. Great man. Who else we've got? Shannon's Hopeline. Lisa and Sandra Callagher. Go check out their website. They have a GoFundMe page. They're really looking for your support around this time. Mental Health Warriors. And I just want to throw this in. Liberty Soup Run. Check those guys out. They're doing amazing work at the moment in the Liberties, feeding the homeless, just feeding anybody that's struggling at the moment. They're doing absolutely fantastic work. And that just leads me to say thanks very much to you guys. Thanks for all your support on all our social media pages. We're getting phenomenal response from our videos and vlogs and the work that we're doing. It's brilliant. And it's all in service of the Magic Mind Heart brand, which stories that have the power to inspire. Everything we do, myself and Andy, is around inspiring you to make change, changing you, and then changing your family and your community. So look, keep up the amazing work. Please share our podcast, share our work, contact us on social media, engage with us. We absolutely love that. Love hearing your feedback. Share our posts, share our work, and share our interviews. You know, we really want our message of inspiration to reach everybody. As always, mind your little self. Enjoy the interview. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, so we're live. Welcome back to the Magic Minds podcast. I'm Matt Burke. On the show today, I'm joined by Dr. Katie Baird. Katie, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good today, Katie. I wasn't great yesterday. The day after we had done the interview, my energy was low, and it was just one of those days. But today, I am fantastic.
Great, good.
How are you today?
I'm equal. I'm good today, but like you said, it's some days are good, some days are not good.
Yeah. Like yesterday, like me and you done this interview the other day. I didn't do the recording. I found it difficult later, and I picked myself up. But the day that was after it, I went into a bit of a lull and a low of energy. But something good came out of it.
Okay.
I wrote a poem called "Compassion," inspired by you.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
Okay, so it's wrote on a page. I've made it into a video and all now, but I'll read it out to you. Let me hear what you think.
Okay.
It's called "Compassion." They say your name on every page of my favorite book. Your gentle appearance lures me in like a hopeless fish to a hook. I see you in the eyes of the young, the old, the brave and the wise, but yet many cannot and will not try to listen, understand, or empathize. With the appearance of a falling feather from a graceful swan, but all is not as it appears, because to hold you in our souls, we need to be pure and strong. You are gentle on the tongue, you are easy on the eye, but to have you in my heart, I must make this lonely trek to the top of the mountain in the sky.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, as we talked about in our last interview,
Mm,
compassion seems, white and fluffy, but it's not really like that. And that's something we'll cover in this interview.
yes. Yeah.
Guys, I've asked Katie to come on the show for the second time. We've done an interview previously and I never recorded it. Katie is a doctor in counseling psychology. She's also a practicing compassion focused therapist. And I'm just absolutely delighted and honored and grateful to get you on a second time. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. I'm delighted to be here again.
Yes, yes, yes. Katie, give us a little insight to your path to the work that you do now. What brought you there and why?
Okay. Um, as I was saying to you before, I have so many different answers to that question. Every time I'm asked, something new seems to come up. And I guess today or this week, for some reason, I've really been thinking about my grandmother. So I really think part of the reason I became a psychologist is that I had two grandmothers, but one of my grandmothers had mental health problems. She was diagnosed with what was called at the time manic depression, so bipolar affective disorder. And as a child, I didn't really understand anything about that, and I was quite shielded. But she was one of my favorite people. And I mean, she was many things besides a person with mental health difficulties. She was a teacher and she had been a single mom and she had kind of raised two kids on her own at a time when that wasn't really a done thing as much as now. And she was really fun and creative. And so I think that my parents always knew that she and I had this kind of special bond. And when she would visit, we would spend time together. We corresponded, we wrote letters to each other. And I often think in some ways that really influenced my choice of what I wanted to do. Um, yeah, she was pretty important to me.
What is it? Can you tell me her name? What was her name?
Her name was Julia.
Lovely,
Yeah.
Julia.
Julia Kathleen. So I'm named after her. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And looking back now, Katie, what was it about her? If you, in reflection, what was it that was so special? Do you think? What was the? Have you put your finger on the pulse of what that actually was, or was it just the purity and the honesty in her struggle that you maybe connected with?
Well, I suppose I didn't know that much about her struggle until I was kind of an older adolescent, but I think there was such a strength in her because she had to find strength to keep going. So, um, a strength and an openness and a willingness. So she did kind of a lot of things for her health and well-being that a lot of people didn't do back then. So like she went on big long walks every day for her fitness, and she ate really well, and she really looked after her appearance and her body. And um, yeah, I think that we can maybe I realized that she wasn't quite like everyone else in ways that I liked.
Yeah.
Um, and she just kept kind of working towards being the best version of herself that she could be.
Wow, that's lovely. Thanks very much for sharing that with me.
Mm.
I'd love you to share with us what you told me the last time when we talked about mentors, spiritual people. You had a lovely mentor growing up. Can you share that with us?
Yes, in high school.
Yeah, that
Yes.
lady. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was very lucky that in my high school we could actually take electives like psychology. So that's when I actually started studying psychology, was in high school, and my teacher was Martha J. Hunt, and she was amazing. She just really inspired curiosity and a love of learning about psychology, and she herself was learning psychology at the time. So she really, I suppose, in many ways, she talked to us students in the class more as a peer, like a co-learner. Again, kind of an idea that's only now coming into fashion, I guess. Back then, that's not how our teachers usually talked to us. Um, yeah, she was an amazing mentor and guide. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know your co-worker, do I call him a co-worker, Paul Gilbert.
Mhm.
He has had a huge impact on your career or your life as a CFT therapist. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So yes, Paul Gilbert, the psychologist who developed compassion focused therapy, who has such a brilliant mind and is also just such a lovely, generous man, um, has been so kind and giving to me. And he has inspired an international movement, not just in the world of therapy, but in the world of politics and institutional change. But I suppose I'm again so lucky when I first started learning about CFT, and I was given the task of starting the CFT program in St. Patrick's Hospital. I phoned up Paul, who I had met at training when I did training with him, and he actually did phone consultations with me um, about starting the group and working with the group. And as more and more colleagues at PATS came in to working in that program, he then did like Skype consultation with groups of us. So, I mean, he's developed this amazing way of responding to human suffering, and he's so generous with sharing his learning. And he really has created a whole community that is equally generous. So Paul and people like Chris Irons and Kate Luker and Deborah Lee, who have kind of each taken a branch of CFT and developed it, are all equally generous with sharing. And it's really amazing to be part of that community. I really actually love it. Yeah.
Wow. I've watched some of the videos that you recommended for me, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But what I loved, and he hooked me in from the get-go when I watched other videos, was he brings humor in.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be very witty,
Mm-hmm.
and that hooked me because that makes him very human to me and very ordinary. He wasn't pontifying or being a tier. It wasn't being a tearist about it.
Yeah, yeah. He's got quite a twinkle in his eye, I think, and a real
There's a bit of there's a bit of boldness in him.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because we need that as well. He helps us remember that we need lightness and humor. And if we're going to engage with really serious, dark stuff, which compassion requires us to do, we need to also laugh and play and be light.
Yeah, and there's a great quote from one of my teachers and guides at the moment. You know, where I sometimes give myself a hard time about laughing about certain things, but she just say to me, "When you're holding the white dove, don't forget that you're holding a black dog as well." You know, you can't be all holy and spiritual all the time. She says, you know, you have to be fun. There has to be a mix.
Yes, yes. And I suppose as well, humor and laughter, especially sharing laughter together, is one of the ways that we stimulate our soothing system. And there's so much threat in the world right now. It's more important than ever that we are able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So can we let's look into CFT. Tell us a bit about it. Where did it start, and anything you could share would be fantastic.
Okay. So CFT, compassion focused therapy, um, as I said, was developed by Paul, and it brings together many different things in psychology and I guess medicine and science. It is very science based. Again, not light and fluffy at all, very much rooted in science. And as Paul would tell the story kind of how he came to develop CFT, was working as a CBT therapist, a psychologist doing cognitive behavioral therapy. So helping people understand that the way that they thought had a significant influence over the way that they felt. And But what he learned was that there were some people for whom, even though they could get really good at tracking their thoughts and challenging them and trying to change them, they didn't actually feel any better. And it turns out that some of us, myself included, have quite a harsh internal critic, so that changing our thoughts isn't really enough. And I suppose Paul would tell the story of learning that people, when they learn to change or challenge their thoughts, they're often doing it in a very harsh, critical way. So, of course, they're not going to feel better. They're actually going to end up feeling worse. Um, so, what compassion focused therapy does is it invites us to work with our thinking and reasoning, but also work with other things like our senses and our emotions, our behavior, our attention and imagination, to really change that harsh, critical relationship with ourselves into one that's more fair and objective, but also more encouraging, gentle, understanding, warm,
Mm,
and sometimes kind. Yeah.
yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. You were saying that we spoke about this before. It's on many levels, on many facets as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's called a multimodal therapy, which means, we don't just work with one aspect of what it means to be a human. We touch base on, for different people, it's individualistic, but we try to engage thinking and reasoning, behavior, using attention and the capacity of the mind to focus on something and have that grow in our awareness, to use our senses to help us feel differently, move from threat to soothing or move from threat to drive, to use our emotions to engage with difficult, painful emotions and also cultivate soothing, warm, pleasurable emotions when that's helpful. So, yeah, so working with lots of different modes or aspects of human functioning to arrive at a healthier place.
Yeah, that's lovely, lovely. We spoke before, but how does it differ from other forms of therapy?
Yeah, so that's, I suppose, in some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't. So, because CFT, we seek to be evidence based in our work. So, if all therapies are working more to look at the evidence about what works, there will be a convergence. So, so therapies will start to look more and more alike as they use the common factors that have been shown to be helpful about therapy. So, for instance, a strong, trusting therapeutic relationship is something that's common to a lot of different kinds of therapy. And we know that that's part of what works. But what I think is really different for me about CFT is that within that therapeutic relationship, it's very much a relationship of equals. It's collaborative, not hierarchical. And there isn't this thing of us professionals and those people who are clients. There's no us and them, there's just an us. So we are all people who suffer. To be human is to suffer. And of course, usually when I'm doing therapy with someone, their suffering is greater than mine, but that doesn't somehow make them less
Mm,
important or wise or knowledgeable than me. So I really like that about CFT, that it's it's about people, human beings, coming together with all the stuff we have to deal with, evolved brains that can do amazing things, but also pretty crazy things and damaging things, behavior that we've had to develop to cope that helps sometimes with certain things, but then creates unanticipated consequences that aren't helpful. We're all coming together with all of that. Um, and again, just trying to make things better.
yeah, I love that approach. I love the it's non-hierarchical, and the white coat is left outside. We're both an even keel. It opens the space for people to really engage with therapy. Then, doesn't it? They don't feel lesser.
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, I believe it creates a kind of, I guess, a space that's made more safe because of the respect I hope that people feel. And I was sharing with you when we talked the other day that I can remember going for therapy as a young person. Um, I was required to do it as part of my training, but I also knew that I needed to do it. And the person I met with, she really, she really treated me as though I wasn't, I'm sure she didn't mean to, but she treated me as though I was inferior, I felt. Her body language and everything was just very kind of judgmental and kind of looking down on me. And it was just really unhelpful. And I couldn't work with her. I didn't go back to her. And so that was such a strong influence on me that I really think therapy has to be collaborative. It cannot be hierarchical.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I'm loving about the concept of compassion focused therapy is that in when not judging other therapies, but what I'm taking from it is that some CBT is very, say, a process based, where if you get it wrong, you're going to criticize yourself. Oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. Where at the core concept of CFT is be kind to yourself, even if you don't get things right, is to be kind with yourself. Because the chances are when you go to therapy and they help you to set up a system to do it this way, you're going to get it wrong. But if you have to, at the root of it, be kind to yourself, even when you get it wrong, it's just lovely for me.
Yes. And I think it's even be gentle and understanding with yourself, especially when you get it wrong, because that's how we learn.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And it's so ironic that I went and done this interview and I didn't record it. So how ironic I had to sit and be kind to myself.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's a great learning. How do we take the concept and the principles of CFT and help parents at the moment that are struggling? What can we do to support that system?
Such a good question, because I think that this must be such a hard time for parents. I'm not a parent, um, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be trying either to work from home and manage all of that and try to educate your children, or if they're not school aged yet, try to mind young children while you're trying to work. It just seems impossible to me. Or if you've lost your job because of the pandemic and you're so worried about the future and you're trying to educate or care for young children. So I guess the first thing I would want for parents is to think, gosh, nobody knows how to do this. Um, so please try not to be too critical of yourselves, or when you feel stressed, to realize that of course you're feeling stressed, because this is massive what people are trying to do. And I read all this online and hear about it. So many people are like, oh, it's so great, all this time to reconnect with my kids and my partner, and oh, it's so relaxed and easy. And I don't think that's the main experience people are having. And so I know that some of my clients are seeing that on Instagram or Facebook, and they're thinking, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. Like, it's really nice. And the people who are having an experience like that, that's so lucky. That's great. But most people, I think, are really struggling. And we need to just accept that. It's hard. You're going to be in threat. You, you're not meant to know how to manage this. You're not meant to know how to teach. It's okay. It's okay. And one of the most helpful things I saw that I've been trying to share with people is kind of like, it's a pandemic. Your job is to keep yourself alive and keep your kids alive.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, you're doing great.
Yeah. A friend of mine in England, I think she does psychotherapy. I think she's doing psychotherapy. We've only connected through a group, and I just watched a video earlier of her, and she was watching something to do with ruby wax. And the words of wisdom from that group was, if you need to stay in bed or fall apart or rise above and smash mountains, then that's it. Just you do you.
Yeah.
Just if you fall apart, you're struggling, you cry and you laugh, and she says, you know what, that's it. Just that is it. Just accept it. Don't, how can you put expectations on yourself when you have never been in this position? It's okay if you're in a 100-meter race. Yeah, this is familiar, but
Yeah.
this is crazy. So it's crazy to put expectations on ourselves, but society has that pressure on us sometimes, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. That's really resonating with me, what you said about just you be you, because one of the things my friends and I are doing to support ourselves is kind of not every morning, but we're sending songs to each other. So like this song helped me this morning. I'm sharing it with you. And I discovered this song I'd never heard before. I just put into Spotify quarantine, and there's all these playlists that people have put together. And there's a song called Hit or Miss by someone called Odetta. I never heard of her. I think it's probably like a 60s or 70s kind of soul thing. But the words of it are, I gotta be me, hit or miss, I've gotta be me. And it just really spoke to me the day I heard it. I was sending it to everyone. I was like, yeah, this is what it's about.
I love when you hear a song or a piece of work that really resonates with you. Like, I'm gonna share with you. Yesterday I was having a difficult time, as I told you. My friend Tuli Mitra, she's a Buddhist practitioner, and she had sent me a video a week ago, and then she sent me another one yesterday. But I hadn't watched the previous one, and I said to her, "Oh my God, Tuli, I never watched your last video. That must be a sign from the guides to go watch it."
Mm.
But just before that video, I've been saying to myself, whatever today is, you're just going to be with it. You're going to lean into it and let it be. So when I watched her video, it was all about just being and leaning into the pain. And I'll actually send it to you. It's very beautiful, but it was a message I needed to hear yesterday.
Great. Please do. I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's about like, and she talks about, people in the tsunami that were struggling. They, instead of going against the wave, they rode into the wave. You're meant to lean into the pain and move with it instead of fighting against it. It's lovely. She does it more justice and articulate. I'll let you listen to it.
Yeah. That's real wisdom, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely. I love to hear those messages, like you wearing the purple top today. To me, that's a sign this was meant to be.
Purple's actually my compassionate color. And one of the CFT practices we do is about imagining a color that speaks to you about warmth and compassion. And it's a bit abstract for some people, but I love it. And yeah, so I wear purple a lot because it helps me feel like I'm enveloped in compassion.
Love it. I love it. When I ask the universe for signs, it usually comes in purple. There's a lot of self-criticism going around and judgment. How do we help parents and people with that, to mind them little selves, to be self-contained, to not let this permeate their psyche, or their well-being?
Yeah, that's just another really good question, because I guess, in CFT we work with kind of acknowledging self-criticism and not getting rid of it, not trying to get rid of that internal critic that many of us have. So I think it is about acknowledging whatever the critic is saying, and maybe even trying to be compassionate about that. Like, what is that critic trying to do for you? Or usually protect you from? What is the fear that you have if you woke up and that critic was just gone? Again, we're not trying to get rid of it, but what if it was gone? What would happen? And often people will say, oh, it would be great. But as we kind of work down through the layers of that, people can realize, oh, I'm afraid I'd kind of lose the run of myself, or I become this rude asshole to people, or and so it's called, really, it's the kind of term for it is functional analysis of the critic. So we try to really understand what is that critic trying to do for us? And then also to cultivate a compassionate self and realize that actually our compassionate self can do that for us in ways that's much less damaging to us, much less discouraging, much less kind of heavy for us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to you today about silencing it or bringing it down, but I think your analogy and your view of our perspective on it is not, it's about listening to it, because everything and everyone is a teacher. So what is the message, you know, and and again, by trying to bring it down is another way of pushing it away. But what if we listen to understand?
Yes. We maybe even kind of let it have its say, because for most of us, trying to silence it just makes it louder. So we let it have its say, and then the kind of thing we do in CFT is we try to balance it. So not challenge it, not argue with it, as maybe some CBT therapists would do, but balance it. So what would like a fair, objective friend say about that? Or even maybe a kind under someone who really got you, who knew what you've been through. What would they say about that? And I think the other thing we talked about as well was how a lot of those things we criticize ourselves for most harshly are really just the consequences of what we've had to do to cope. All of us have had to learn things and do things to cope with the unchosen things that have happened to us, that have been part of our lives. Just trying to get safe or get something that we need. And then we have these unintended things that have happened, and we often blame ourselves for them, but that's not what we chose. We didn't choose that. And it's really important to recognize that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know from my own struggles in the past, a lot of the decisions I made or make came from a subconscious place, and it's usually out of a place of being hurt and trying to protect myself. So I never intentionally ever tried to hurt anyone or cause chaos or drama or stress to people's life. I just didn't know any better. As Maya Angelou would say, if you knew better, you do better.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's so important what you said about it comes often from ways we've been hurt, things that were done to us, or things that we maybe needed and weren't done for us. And that's so much a reality of so many people's lives. It's not the exception, really. It's more what happens to us in life. Many people are hurt by life, and we need to really be honest about that and not expect this kind of rosy, perfect life, because that isn't reality. Life, as the Buddha taught, is suffering. And if we can accept that and move towards it, we can transform it. If we're spending all of our time trying to fight it, we suffer a lot more.
Oh yeah, as the Buddhist saying would say, the more we resist, the more it persists. You know, the energy, the negative energy we put in, it just vibrates back to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we stop playing that tug of war, pull, push, we drop the rope, it just becomes a little easier.
Yeah, but I guess we can only do that when we become aware, can't we? Because we can never escape the fact that we're evolved animals. You know, we've got like hardwired coping strategies: fight, flight, freeze, appease. We didn't choose them, but they are hardwired into us. And it's often only after we're well into one that we realize, oh, this is not what I want to be doing.
Yeah, I can really resonate with that. And it's only awareness is the greatest skill of mankind.
Yeah.
It's only when you become aware of a problem that you can actually address it, because we blindly go around and not know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like one of my greatest difficulties in life and shames that I had growing up was my broken relationships with my kids' parent or the parents of my kids. But I was trying to operate based off what I seen my parents do. They have a loving relationship, they're a lovely couple, and I thought I was just entitled to do that, but didn't take into account that I had struggles of my own that just wouldn't allow me to go there. And it's took me a long time then to realize that, or to become aware.
Yes, yes. Mm. It's often so painful, isn't it, to kind of realize I'm not having the life I thought I would have, or I'm not having the life I think I should have. But it's only when we do that that we can then begin to create that life, to move towards what we want. Yeah.
The analogy I gave it was like trying to play for Manchester United, but only having one leg, or
Yeah.
or play basketball with their arms. I just hadn't got the skill set right now to
Yeah.
participate at that level that I had expected myself.
Yes.
So only when I stood back, I went, like, my parents have a different story. They have a great relationship. They didn't have the life that I had. So how could I expect to have this? But I will eventually when I work through
Yeah.
life. So I've been kind to myself.
Yes. Yeah. And understanding, seeing that, oh, that's their story. That's not my story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they have a loving relationship. They're lovely people, and they were my mentors. My parents, who, as a couple, they're just great for each other, brilliant. So I said, I wanted that. So it was nearly like, how would I say it? It wasn't the best thing in the world to have, because I didn't have that skill set, but equally I've learned loads from it, and I still aspire to have that. So that's cool.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
My greatest difficulty, and I know it's from speaking to other people as well, is staying here in the now, and stop worrying about the future, or falling back into the past. How do you recommend that people stay here? I use awareness, mindfulness, meditation, whatever. What do you think is best?
So I think there are so many ways to do it, but I guess first I maybe want to say that I think it's a very powerful thing to be able to do. So important, especially now, because nobody knows what's going to happen with this pandemic. And I suppose we know eventually there will be, we won't have these restrictions, and hopefully we won't have this powerful virus that can kill people, but we don't really know how that's going to happen. Or so we need to just try and deal with today. We need to not look too far into that. And equally, I find that I need to not look back too much into even just a few months ago when life was so different, because it can't have that right now. And the ways I'm bringing myself into the moment right now are kind of daily practices of yoga, for one. Really love yoga, and I've been into it for a few decades. I won't say how many. I have a great teacher, Keith Tracy, who really helps me stay focused with that. But also just moments of being in the moment through my mindful practice is very much compassion focused practices. So soothing rhythm breathing practice, doing that color practice, visualizing stepping into my compassionate self. And before we stop, I'll tell people how they can find out more about these things. But that's what works for me. That's what brings me into the moment. And also using my senses. So looking at the beautiful flowers coming out, appreciating the sunlight, having soothing smells that I can use, like geranium oil is a really lovely thing that pulls me into the moment. I don't know if you can see them, but I have in my office, I have really nice velvet chairs that are really nice to touch, and they really make me aware that I'm sitting in a chair in this moment. I'm not doing whatever my head is projecting me doing into the future. And finally, I guess eating nice food is good too. Nice, nutritious food that boosts my immune system. And yeah.
Love it. I have a velvet chair too, and it's purple. You
Oh,
can't see
wow.
it. Yeah, I didn't choose all these colors. Just one day I realized when I started off bringing it together, going, this is purple, that's purple. I was like, wow, purple is just everywhere. So yeah, this is a velvet chair, so I love it.
Mm.
What yoga practice do you practice? What is it called?
So it's mostly vinyasa, so moving through different postures.
Flow.
Yeah. So I'm also doing this thing. I started doing it. You know, when the lockdowns and restrictions started all over the world, everybody put up these free classes you could do. Um, so I started doing this class called The Class, which I thought was kind of funny. Um, and it's streamed live from Tribeca in New York. So um, I suppose in one way, I wanted to feel with people in New York because that's the heart of the pandemic in my first country, which is America. Um, I'm an Irish citizen, but also an American citizen. So, and this is it's kind of a lot of different things. It's like a bit of yoga, a bit of aerobics, a bit of meditation and mindfulness. So kind of adapted that as well. That's what I'm doing now. A bit of like just shaking out negativity. I really like it. And people can get a free 2-week trial if they're interested. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I started doing pranayama breathing. Well, I got into a couple of months ago, but now I started doing a course. I haven't been very diligent this week with it, but a lot of breath work.
Mm.
And that segue right back to where we were the other day. And you absolutely laid a beautiful bit of information and knowledge for me to learn was the power of bringing people into their body. I talk about, that's where I like to do, instead of calling it meditation, I call it breath work. But then you brought awareness to me about some people might not feel comfortable going back into the body. Can we touch on that again? Because I thought it was powerful.
Yeah, okay, yes, thanks for bringing that back up. So for many of us, to sit and be with the breath is very calming and soothing. And it's definitely something nature gave us to help us soothe ourselves. Like even if we are with a baby and it's crying, we kind of soothe it and try to kind of help it breathe slower. But for many people, especially if their trauma is rooted in their body, the body can feel like a very unsafe place to be. So what we try to do, we want to help people reclaim their breath and to feel safe in their bodies, but that's often a slow process that we kind of use objects to help them feel safe first before they try to make that inward journey. So it can be anything that feels soothing to them in their hand or a chair or yeah. So,
Yeah, lovely. And it's what you said back to earlier. Your senses, the touches, the smell, the taste.
yeah.
It is a place to bring them back to, but it's not like you saying get into your body, because that could be a trigger for some people.
Exactly. That could be a terrifying experience. Yeah.
That had a powerful, profound effect on me to think about that, because it was I never even thought about it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's so on point, and I'll bring that into my meditation or my breathing practice.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And if you can imagine, if we even just take a minute to think about what that must be like, and is so many people's realities that their body doesn't feel like a safe home for them, and how much courage it takes for them to even approach that, to even think about starting to reclaim that. And that reminds me of what we were talking about earlier as well, that compassion is courage. Like, it's not fluffy and soft. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about it the last day, and it's something that I learned from Paul. Compassion requires courage and wisdom.
Yeah.
And in order to have courage, you need to turn in. Compassion starts as an inside job.
Yeah.
And, it takes, as you said yourself, it's the work.
Yes. Yes. And compassion involved, there's a flow of compassion. So there is compassion for ourselves, self-compassion. There's the flow of giving compassion to someone else. Like, for instance, if they forget to record something, helping them realize that's not such a big deal, that's okay. And receiving compassion from them, allowing other people to support and show compassion to us. So in compassion focused therapy, we're interested in cultivating all three of these, and they're all important. Most of us will find one easier than the other two, or two easier than the third, but we can work on all three.
And it's fascinating you say that about receiving. I was only talking to one of my mentors today, and she was saying that the chances are that my feminine would be down, so I find it difficult to let in my masculine. I'm really good at minding and caring for people. Sometimes I just don't let it in, and that's something I have to work on.
Yes, yeah, we all do.
Yes, yes. I know from my own experience, a lot of my life was spent up on my intellect, ting, problem solving up here. How do we get people to bring that down and back into their heart?
That is a great question, because that's so important. I share that with you. I kind of live in my head. Maybe not so much anymore, because I have been really working on it, but I think a lot shapes us in the West to be that way. We're really encouraged to do that through education and other things. But I suppose I try to help people realize, it's a phrase that I really like, is that we're not just heads with bodies attached. We're bodies with a head attached as well.
Yeah.
And there is so much wisdom and so much knowing in our bodies if we can just drop into them sometimes. So whether that's through the breath, if that feels safe, or even, I know today I was working with someone just to bring her hand to her heart and breathe into that, and just trust that. It's actually quite a different experience. Like everything feels differently when we're connected to our body. And yeah, we just have to slow down enough to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
Paul has these phrases, like, kind of as we start a practice, slowly saying, body slowing down, mind slowing down, and just getting into a posture, a different posture, a posture of strength and groundedness, and having a facial expression that's friendly. All of those kind of micro changes can bring us into our body and change our brain at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I brought that into my practice, as we spoke before. When I meditate and I drift off, I adapt a playful attitude, and I smile and go, haha, look, you've just drifted off. Come on back, come on back. And in my practice, I tell people to try do that. You know, set your intentions that it's not super serious. It's just a practice, and you can smile, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, or any of the spiritual leaders like Jack Cornfield, or it's not a super serious. You don't get no medals for mindfulness and awareness.
Exactly. Yeah. And every time we can smile or half smile, we're sending a message to our brain that everything's okay. And then that goes all through our body.
And it's lovely. I think Jack Cornfield touched on it for me. It's not about telling yourself to relax. It's about sending a signal to the parasympathetic nervous system. Let's relax here by my actions rather than an expectation on myself.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Bringing in that vagus nerve that goes from the base of our brain all through our body, and letting it turn on the parasympathetic. Absolutely.
It's interesting you said that, the vagus nerve. I started doing pranayama, bee humming meditation or mindfulness or breath work stimulates the vagus nerves to relax us.
Yes, yes. And I know we had talked about the videos that Paul Gilbert has made freely available to people. There's a lot about how to work with your vagus nerve in those videos, and other resources as well. So I might go ahead and mention those now, if that's okay.
100%. That'd be brilliant. We're going to move on to low-hanging fruit tips and takeaways. So that's brilliant.
Yeah. So those are videos that Paul Gilbert has created with Hannah Gilbert, and they are on the Compassionate Wellbeing website. So it's just www.compassionatewellbeing.com, and they're under compassion, safe relating, and world change. So at the moment there's 12 videos up for anyone who's interested in any of these ideas we've been talking about how to use compassion and these ideas to help yourself, help your kids, help other people to access their courage and wisdom at this time.
Brilliant. Excuse me, I learned a load from those videos, you know, like, as I said, the courage, the wisdom. I went on and made a video about it. I wrote a poem on it. And also the language. And I was speaking to one of my friends in the job, she's a doctor in psychology. This social distancing, you know, it didn't serve people well. Maybe, you know, the safe distancing, or we should have actually thought a bit more harder about the language that was used, because I have felt the impact of that when I've gone to my mom's or I'm out in the public, people pulling away from me, the social distancing, even though I know it's for the best. I found it hard.
It's, because we're wired to read that as threatening.
Yeah.
And to experience being alone and isolated as threatening. So even the term, I think self-isolation is equally a really difficult term. And Paul's idea that to use the term safe relating, we can be safe with each other, but still in connection. And the irony is we're doing all this for each other anyway. So it is about the connectivity of all of us and how to keep that going, to relate safely to each other, recognizing that we're a species who needs other people. So we're not distancing from each other, we're relating safely to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And another lovely point I picked up from the video as well was the impact of the negative bias that the media play on, you know, by throwing out the tragedy, and feeds into people's psyche. People need to be mindful of that, you know.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard too, isn't it? Because I know I take news breaks some days and I do feel a lot better, but then I realize I don't have a clue what's going on.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but sometimes my clients will mention something and I'm like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. So I have to acknowledge that. But we need to be really, really careful about who we listen to and how much we listen to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Brilliant. I thought the videos were a great resource. I will put the link to them on the show notes, links to your website. I'll put all that up because I think it's a valuable resource. Even the video that you sent me the other day, I'll stick that up as well.
Right.
I know you touched on yoga. What else? What do you do to mind your little self other than your yoga?
Yeah, so I have my yoga, my compassion practices that I do, and I really, being honest, I don't just ask other people to do them, I do them too. I think compassion focused therapy is a therapy that you have to do from the inside out. So it isn't going to be believable in any way if I'm not doing this stuff too. So I try to balance my critic. I try to recognize when I'm in threat, when I'm in drive, when I'm in soothing. I try to allow the compassion of the people around me in. I don't always find it easy. Like you, I find it much easier to care for people. Or my partner would probably say, control them. But, so try to back off a bit as well. And I find music helpful. I find film and books really helpful. From a very young age, I was really into, actually, part of the reason I think I'm into psychology is I like people's stories. So, and I can sometimes get out of my own head by getting into someone else's stories. So I'm finding that watching my favorite films right now is really helpful. In fact, last night my partner and I were trying to kind of come up with a bit of a game plan. I find especially weekends right now hard because you can't do the things that I want to do that I usually enjoy. Like I would love to go to the cinema or just go for a walk by the sea. I don't live within 2 kilometers of the sea, so I can't do that. So one of the things is we're going to watch our favorite old movies, like black and white movies. that when life kind of seems really glamorous and easier than it is now.
It's lovely. It's about using the other side of our brain, isn't it? The creative side rather than the analytical side, and that's something that people have really took advantage of in this epidemic, is exploring both sides of their brain, the creative side and the analytical side, and we're really made to work right now, which is great.
Yes, absolutely. How about you? How are you looking after yourself?
How do I look after myself? I mindfully made sure that my structure kept very similar to what it was before. I get up at the same time, I go to bed at the same time, I do the same things, I eat the same foods. The only thing I'm missing really is the connection with my family and my daughters. That's the hardest part. I haven't seen my younger daughter in a couple of weeks. But we're staying connected on, Skype, and I read our bedtime stories, and we're sending videos back and forth. But I tried to keep structure. I kept on training. I keep my nutrition on point, and I read a lot. I try to read a lot. You touched on you like to read. Have you any pearls of wisdom books or something that you're reading that you'd like to share with me?
Oh, well, I just finished reading Samantha Power's book, The Education of an Idealist. One of my friends gave it to me for Christmas. So she's an Irish-born person who moved to America, maybe around 12, and she became Barack Obama's ambassador to the UN. So she was a big human rights activist. She wrote a book on genocide and won the Pulitzer Prize for it. She's an amazing, impressive person. But she wrote this book where she just comes across as any other person. She's got just a great way of telling stories, and I loved it so much I actually sent it to my mom, who's also reading it now. But I would definitely recommend that, because her whole thing is about the power of one person to make a change.
It's having this ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Irvin Yalom. I've read a lot of his books. I just love him. I love his, and your approach, and just even in this interview, the way you've given me yourself, and I'm sure you do that in therapy, and I believe that's the way therapy works, for me anyway.
Yes, I do too. Yeah.
As we wrap up, what's the one thing you would like people to take away after listening to this interview with you?
So the same thing came immediately just now as when you asked me that the other night. I would really hope that people would hear, you're not alone. Whatever's going on with you, there is somebody else in the world suffering in that same way, I'm sure. We all suffer. Our suffering may not be the same. I saw something really wise today. People are saying we're all in the same boat. We're actually not all in the same boat. Some people are in really crappy boats. We are all in boats. That is true. Whatever you're going through, you're not alone. We're a species who are really being challenged now, and I would just encourage people to try and reach out to someone else if they are feeling really lonely and isolated, because people do want to help.
We must be reading the same post, because I read that somewhere as well, and I really liked it, and as I told you before, I wrote a poem on You're Not Alone. Our stories are different, Katie, but the emotions are the same. We might be all feeling up, low, down, middle, whatever, but our stories are different. So we're not all the same and all in together. We're having a collective experience, but it's not the same for everyone.
No. But we're all dealing with a lot of stuff we never thought we'd have to deal with. Yeah.
100%. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier, just be you, just whatever comes up for you, just accept it. Probably don't have any expectations on yourself if you can. And if you have expectations, that's okay too, but just to be kind to your little self.
Yes. See them for what they are. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Katie, thanks very much again. I'm absolutely honored to get you back on again. If I'm going to be honest, I felt this was better for me, this interview. I felt more connected. Maybe I was on a different place. That's why I didn't press record, or it wasn't meant to be. But I got probably more from this interview than I did the last. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I have the same feeling again, that I feel like we could just keep talking about this for hours.
Yeah. It was absolutely beautiful. Thanks very much for giving me yourself again. Thanks for being so honest and showing me all of your true, beautiful self. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Have a great day. Mind your little self.
You too.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.